Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and today I'm doing an unhaul. I've been accumulating books that I wanted to unhaul for a while now, but the number increased suddenly just today as I was watching a video by Olivia of Olivia's Catastrophe as she was doing an unhaul and explaining why she was getting rid of all of her Narnia books. So Olivia had done a video, I think a couple of months ago, about her recent reread of The Last Battle, which is the last book in the Chronicles of Narnia, and she talked about in that video how racist the descriptions and all of the writing surrounding the antagonists of that story were, including the fact that C.S. Lewis had the good guy characters refer to the antagonists who were caricaturized versions of people of color, I think somewhat inspired by Northern Africa or the Middle East, as a slur that begins with D. And as I was watching that, I was thinking, what? But as I kept thinking about it and reaching quite a ways back for those memories, because that particular book I haven't reread since I was a kid because I didn't like it that much, I was like, oh, I do remember that. The reasons that I didn't like it at the time were, one, it was scary. The monkey who pretended to be a human, which was another really racist thing that C.S. Lewis put in that book, creeped me the heck out. And the whole book was kind of depressing until the end, and then C.S. Lewis did Susan really dirty, and I hated that, so that's why I didn't like it personally. I didn't know much about racism and how that manifests when I was a kid. I like to think I would have noticed that if I had read it, you know, more recently, but I can't give C.S. Lewis credit for not knowing what he was doing, and so that really bothers me and makes me rethink my opinion of him as a person. I've read quite a few of his theological books in addition to his fiction, and really liked them and agreed with most of them, but he doesn't really bring up non-white people that much. But now that I've been made aware of this in his fiction, it kind of is going to affect my reading of the rest of his books as well. But anyway, as far as the whole series go, this is my set that I rebought post-fire because we had the full set before the fire. And the editions are really beautiful with all of these gorgeous covers. But in this one, which was my favorite as a kid, I think because unlike the rest, this isn't as much of a portal fantasy. I don't like portal fantasies because everybody has to go home and be separated from all the friends they've made during the story at the end of the book. But this one is about two characters who are from the Narnia magical world and stay there their whole lives. Plus there was a talking horse who is very heavily involved. But this one features the same people who are the bad guys in The Last Battle, and although there is one good character who is of the same ethnicity, Olivia says that there is also quite a bit of racism in this one, and I totally believe her without having to reread it myself, because if he talked that way about them in the other book, why wouldn't he do it in this book? But the reason that Olivia was getting rid of the rest of the series all at the same time is because there's also a bit of a sexism issue with several of the books. A lot of gender norms, the male characters being nasty to the female characters, not ever really like apologizing or realizing that that was not okay. Personally, I find the treatment of Lucy specifically relatively feminist, at least to my standards for people writing in the 1950s, I think. Yeah, 51 was the first time for Prince Caspian, because she is shown to be the most in tune with Aslan, who most of you probably know is the Jesus character, and when the boys, her brothers, don't believe her when she tells them something, both in Lion Witch Wardrobe and in Prince Caspian, things end up badly for them. And I really like that. And also the character of Susan being an older sister, whereas in a lot of sexist literature, sisters are only ever the younger sibling. She isn't the oldest, and there is the whole Peter being the High King of Narnia and being more in charge than all the other ones, sexist thing, but her being the older sister to Edmund and also being the most logical one and the most like take care of business one, I really appreciated that. And then of course he did her really dirty in The Last Battle, and he did Lucy really dirty in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. In the Silver Chair we have another instance of the girl getting directions straight from Aslan, telling them to the boy, and the boy ignoring her, and then things going badly because of that. And I also really like this one specifically for one character who's like a frog person. Basically the only way that C.S. Lewis in this series managed not to be racist is when he just manages not to talk in a racist fashion about non-white people, is when he doesn't talk about them at all. So I'm considering keeping that one. I'm considering keeping that one and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I'm not sure about it. They make a really nice set, so if I like donated them, then someone could get the whole set for cheap at a charity shop, and then the charity shop would get, you know, nice money. But I also asked Olivia what she's planning to do with hers, because I suspect she's planning on donating them. That's what we booktubers generally do with our book unhauls, but also it feels weird to like pass on a book that, instead of just being not to your taste, or that you have multiple copies of, or that was just subpar, as opposed to passing on a book that you're getting rid of because it's got racist and sexist problems, because I don't want to like put that on another reader who like doesn't know it's in there, or a little white kid boy, and then further entrench their already probably racist and sexist upbringing. So I'm not really sure what I want to do with these, whether I just want to put them in my closet in the back, but I definitely don't want them on my shelves that I film in front of. They used to be right here, which is generally blocked by my head, but still, feel free to comment down below what your opinions are on those types of passing on books issues, but I will at least be putting them away somewhere. So a little later in the video I will show you what I'm replacing them with, because they do leave quite a gap right there. But since I was deciding to do that today, I also went through some of my books and picked out some other ones that I felt like unhauling. So one of those is this by Jen Caron, At Home in Mitford. My whole family has been rereading this series because my dad likes, you know, very homey, non-sexy farmer little town type stories. So, and we want to encourage him to read because he's retired now and he needs things to do. So my mom has bought all the ebooks of these, and also my uncle bought my grandma the first 3 paperbacks of these in a really pretty edition that matches one that I have up here. And when she passed on, I got all 3 of those, so I now have an ebook copy and another paperback copy of this book, so I don't need this one anymore, so it can go on to bless someone else, either in a little free library or in a used bookshop. Then we have The Golden Compass, which I got in a book haul almost a year ago now from a used sale, and I wanted to read it because I've seen a lot about it, and a lot of people really liked it. And it's middle grade fantasy, so you know, right up my alley. But I was reading it and there was a lot of sadness in it, and then it started being really dark and creeping me out, so I put it down and didn't pick it back up. And then 6 months later or so, the author, I think on Twitter, but somewhere publicly, defended J.K. Rowling's right to be transphobic without anybody telling her off for it. So I figured that was as good an excuse as any to not bother with finishing the book. So I'm going to give that one away as well. And obviously if this is sold to someone used or goes to them through a free little library, they're not going to give that author any money for it, so I figured that won't be a problem. Then we have City of Veils, which I got in a book haul a year and a half ago and read it pretty soon after that and liked it well enough for what it was. It helped me branch out. I don't read thriller type mysteries very often, and this was that, but I have no desire to reread it, so I can just pass it on. Then we have Stalking Jack the Ripper, which has a beautiful cover. It was a cover buy, but I know a lot of people really do like this series, so I think that if I pass it on, that will be a really nice find for somebody else. Reason I didn't like it, I found the ending overly predictable, and it went along with the trope of the answer to the mystery is whatever will cause the most pain to the main character, which I hate that trope so much. Also, for The Girl Who Stalked Jack the Ripper, the title, I wanted it to be a much cooler, more badass sort of a story of like physically fighting wise and not just solving a mystery wise, especially because she's also holding a knife on the cover, but it was not that, so my expectations being extra high also didn't help. Then we have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I actually first borrowed this from my cousin and aunt, who have very similar reading tastes, and really liked it when I first read it. It was actually the first book I ever reviewed on this channel, and I was super excited about it at the time, but since then I have never reread it, and the longer it has been since I reread it, and the more I could not get into the next book in the series, and the whole thing with the third book in the series still not being out, I just don't feel like rereading this. And even when the third book eventually comes out, or if I eventually read the second book, I remember enough of this that I don't think I'm gonna have to reread it. I really liked the magical school element, so if you are looking for more magical school stuff to replace the books by She Who Must Not Be Named, this might fulfill some of those cravings, but it is very slow, be warned of that, and the magic school stuff takes place mostly in the last 50%. And then this, which is actually a book that I love, but I have a second copy right there. I would rather that this was the first book in the series instead of the second, because I'm always frustrated when I buy like further into a series, not the first book, when I go get a used book. But if someone is collecting this series, this could help them complete their collection, or could just inspire them to pick up the first book, which I really hope will happen because I love this series so much. It is very whimsical, middle grade fantasy. It's got some Howl's Moving Castle vibes. As far as wackiness, it's a portal fantasy, but the same kid keeps coming back to the same magical land over and over. But it also addresses kids who go to fairyland and then get ripped out of it and sent back to less than great home lives, and how traumatic that would be. And I really appreciate that this author actually looked into that. So those are all the books that I am unhauling. The books that I'm sticking back into this hole are going to be these. This Princess, Love Letters from Her King. This is from when I was a kid, and it was really precious and devotional that I used to read. Basically, it goes well with the color format. Tempest by Beverly Jenkins, which I got earlier this year, and really enjoyed. This is in my video 5 more romances, but also back to SSF, I think. If you want more details on how much I like this one and why. It's feminist, it's also hilarious. I really like Beverly Jenkins' humor. And Rebel by Beverly Jenkins, which I haven't read yet, but which has a pretty tealish, grayish sort of color that I really like. Soulless by Gail Carriger, an Alexia Terabatti novel, and I really like Gail Carriger's sense of humor as well. Plus, this is my first foray into paranormal romance since Twilight, and I loved it, and that has opened me up to more paranormal romance and stories in general, and I really appreciate that because it's really good. And also The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. This I read for the autism rep. The hero has autism, and it was really good. It was really sweet, and I identified with a lot of Ian Mackenzie's feelings. This is fairly slapdash compared to the rest of the organization of my bookshelves, but I will gradually be fiddling with it as time goes on. to get the colors a little bit more matchy-matchy. But for right now, I think it works fairly well, fills in the gap. Several of these books are very much rereads for me, so I like having them easily accessible right there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!